You're watching Reddity Stories, where HOA Karens learn the hard way that some homeowners don't back down. Tell me which country you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real justice stories. It started with a sound. Not the kind that draws your attention once, but the kind that keeps echoing in your head long after it's gone. The deep, vibrating growl of diesel engines grinding over wood. It happened every morning for a week, the unmistakable rumble of heavy cement trucks rolling across my private bridge. The bridge was small, built by my father decades ago. It crossed a narrow creek that cut through our property before meeting the community road. My home sat on 10 acres of land, just outside the HOA's jurisdiction, or at least that's what I thought. The bridge wasn't designed for heavy vehicles, and every time a cement truck passed, I felt it shudder under the strain. At first I thought it was a mistake, maybe a driver took the wrong turn. But when I followed the tire marks, I saw the truth. They led straight to a new construction site just across the creek. And that site? It was managed by none other than the HOA president herself, Karen Renshaw. Karen had a reputation. She wasn't the kind of person who enforced rules. She created them, bent them, and forced everyone else to follow. Her current obsession was building an HOA community center, a concrete monstrosity that most residents didn't even want. But she wanted it, and apparently she wanted to use my bridge to build it. I put up a sign that read, "Private property, no heavy vehicles." The next morning, it was gone, replaced by a freshly poured slab of concrete at the edge of my property, covering my warning like it had never existed. I walked the bridge again, running my hand across the wood. The beams were already cracking from the weight. My father had built this bridge by hand, using oak and steel back when he still worked as a carpenter. It wasn't just a crossing, it was a memory, a part of our family's history. So when the HOA started treating it like their personal construction road, something in me snapped. I reported it to the county. They shrugged it off as a civil issue. The sheriff's office said they couldn't interfere unless there was property damage. The HOA ignored every letter I sent. And Karen, well, she smiled every time she saw me, like she knew she was untouchable. But she wasn't. I decided to set up a few cameras near the bridge. I wanted proof, real, undeniable footage of what they were doing. Within a day, I had hours of recordings showing the trucks crossing over, each one heavier than the last. Some even carried rebar and gravel. I could see the bridge bowing slightly in the middle, just barely holding together. That night, I sat on my porch, listening to the creek run beneath the moonlight. The air was still, but the tension wasn't. I knew the bridge wouldn't survive much longer, and when it went, it wouldn't just take out the structure, it could take out a truck, or worse. I called a structural engineer, a friend from my old construction days. He came by the next morning and inspected the damage. His verdict was grim. The bridge had less than a week before it would fail under that kind of weight. Karen didn't care. The next morning, she had 3 trucks lined up again. That's when I realized she wasn't just using my bridge. She was testing me. Every HOA story has a turning point, that one moment where things go too far. Mine came when I saw Karen standing at the edge of the creek, clipboard in hand, watching as her workers drove over like they owned it. She smirked at me, then turned away. That was the moment I decided to fight back. Not with letters or warnings, but with something she'd never expect. That night, I spent hours working under the cover of darkness. I reinforced the underside of the bridge, not with new wood, but with a clever bit of engineering that would change everything. I set up a pressure system tied to the cameras, designed to trigger when the bridge was overloaded. It wasn't meant to hurt anyone, just to make a point. When I was done, I double-checked every wire, every beam. Then, I waited. By the next morning, the first truck arrived, then the second, and finally, Karen herself showed up to inspect progress. She didn't even glance at me standing nearby. She just gestured for the driver to go ahead. I watched as the heavy cement truck rolled forward, its tires sinking slightly into the softening wood. Halfway across, the system activated. The bridge didn't collapse, it groaned loudly and then released a burst of bright orange paint from hitting nozzles I'd installed underneath the bridge. The entire truck, the driver's window, and the fresh concrete mixer were splattered in paint. A huge banner shot up from the side reading, "Trespassing, private property." The noise drew half the neighborhood out of their homes, and Karen, she froze, her pristine white outfit covered in streaks of orange from the paint mist. Everyone saw it. Everyone laughed. And most importantly, everyone finally saw who she really was. Karen screamed at the driver to back up, but the damage was done, both to her reputation and to her project. The paint didn't just stain her clothes, it stained her control. The bridge was safe for now, but I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to back down easily. If anything, this public humiliation would only fuel her next move. And whatever it would be, I had a feeling it was going to be bigger, louder, and far more dangerous. After the paint trap incident, the bridge became local legend. Neighbors whispered about it during HOA meetings. Kids rode their bikes down the creek path just to see where it happened. And the online video of Karen screaming in her paint-streaked clothes spread faster than a wildfire. I didn't post it. Someone else did. One of the construction workers must have uploaded it, and within a day, the clip was everywhere. People titled it, "HOA Karen Gets Instant Karma," and tagged the neighborhood name. Suddenly, my quiet rural community was the center of unwanted attention. Karen, on the other hand, was furious. The HOA's Facebook page turned into a battleground. Some defended her, saying the bridge was technically part of a public easement, a claim that wasn't even close to true. Others mocked her for trespassing. The comments poured in faster than she could delete them. That's when she decided to retaliate. It started subtly. Notices began appearing in my mailbox. Not official letters, but printed warnings that looked vaguely legal. One accused me of sabotaging community infrastructure. Another threatened civil penalties for public endangerment. None had a signature or letterhead. Then came the visits. A man in a reflective vest appeared one morning claiming to be from the county's engineering office. He said he was there to inspect bridge safety violations. I asked for identification, and he refused. When I called the real county office, they confirmed they hadn't sent anyone. It was intimidation, plain and simple. Karen was using the HOA's influence to create noise, reports, complaints, false claims. But what she didn't realize was that every step she took was being documented. I had cameras rolling around the clock now, and every visit, every threat, every fake notice went straight into a growing folder of evidence. The real problem came a week later, when I noticed something strange at the bridge. Someone had dumped gravel into the creek, blocking part of the water flow. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. I followed the trail and found more. Construction debris, concrete chunks, even a few broken boards from the old fence near Karen's project site. She was trying to cause a flood. If the creek overflowed, it would damage my bridge beyond repair. She wanted nature to do what she couldn't, destroy it without blame. That night, the rain came. Heavy, steady, unrelenting. By midnight, the creek was roaring. I put on my jacket, grabbed my flashlight, and ran down to the bridge. The water was high, pushing against the supports. For a moment, I thought it might hold. But then I saw the gravel barrier rising like a dam and the current swirling around it. If it didn't break soon, my whole property would flood. I waded into the cold, waist-deep water and started pulling rocks by hand. The current fought me, nearly sweeping me off my feet. The bridge creaked under the strain, each wave slamming against the beams. I worked for nearly an hour before the barrier finally gave way. The water rushed through, dragging the debris downstream and lowering the pressure. The bridge survived, but barely. By sunrise, I was soaked, exhausted, and angrier than I had ever been. That morning, I drove straight to the county office. I brought every photo, every video, every fake notice. The county attorney listened carefully, then asked one question. Did I have proof that the HOA president herself was involved? I didn't yet, but I would soon. The next few days, I noticed Karen's routine. She'd show up at the construction site in her black SUV, stand near the creek with her phone, and then leave after a few minutes. I knew she wasn't checking progress. She was checking me, watching, waiting. So I set a new trap. This time, it wasn't paint. It was silence. I turned off the cameras closest to the bridge, but left a hidden one nearby. To anyone watching, it looked like I'd given up surveillance. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then on the third night, around midnight, the SUV's headlights appeared. Karen got out with 2 men, one of them the fake inspector. They carried buckets and what looked like cement mix. She was trying again, this time to reinforce the creek barrier permanently. I recorded the entire thing, every second of them trespassing, mixing, and dumping cement. By morning, the footage was uploaded not to the public, but straight to the sheriff's department and the county attorney. I attached the timestamps, location data, and her vehicle's license plate. Within 24 hours, the county investigators were on site. They documented the illegal dumping, the environmental damage, and the trespassing. Karen tried to claim it was part of a community improvement effort. But when the officers found the bucket still labeled with her construction company's name, that defense fell apart fast. She was issued citations and fined heavily for illegal dumping and unauthorized use of private property. But that wasn't what broke her. It was the county's decision to suspend construction on her HOA project pending investigation. Her dream of the community center was over. For a moment, I thought it was done. The bridge was standing, the construction had stopped, and the HOA had gone quiet. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her didn't accept defeat. They plotted it. And sure enough, I was right. 3 days later, I woke up to the sound of my dogs barking. Not the usual warning bark. This was sharp, urgent, and frantic. When I stepped outside, I saw it. Someone had cut the locks on my gate and left a large flatbed truck parked halfway up my driveway. On it sat a load of wooden beams and equipment. Karen had sent workers to remove my bridge, claiming it was unsafe for the community. That was the last straw. I called my attorney and the sheriff, then walked down to the bridge. I stood there in the early morning light, watching as the workers hesitated, unsure whether to follow through. I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I just waited until the sheriff's patrol car came around the bend. Karen arrived minutes later, yelling from her SUV as officers approached her. She tried to play the victim again, said I was obstructing public safety, that I had endangered her workers, that she was acting in good faith. But the sheriff had already seen the reports, the footage, the court filings. This time, it wasn't warnings or citations. It was handcuffs. Karen was taken into custody for trespassing, harassment, and illegal construction activity. As the officers led her away, I looked back at the bridge. It had taken everything. Time, patience, even a few sleepless nights. But it was still standing, just like it had for decades. I thought it was the end. But what I didn't know was that Karen had friends, and they weren't ready to let it go quietly. The morning after Karen's arrest, the neighborhood felt different, quieter, calmer, but also tense, like the air before a storm. The HOA board hadn't said a word publicly, but everyone knew they wouldn't let things end with her in handcuffs. For years, Karen had been their bulldozer. If she went down, they'd go down too. It didn't take long. A certified letter arrived just 2 days later. The HOA was suing me. The claim? Obstruction of community access, emotional distress, and defamation. They wanted the bridge removed, the land cleared, and damages paid. I wasn't surprised. I took the letter straight to my attorney, the same one who'd helped me file reports after the dumping incident. He laughed when he read it. The HOA had filed the case in the local civil court, claiming the bridge violated a community easement. But the problem for them was simple. No such easement existed. My land deeds went back almost a century, long before the HOA had even been founded. Still, I knew they'd try to twist things. The weeks leading up to the trial were full of noise. Rumors spread through the neighborhood that I'd attacked Karen, that I'd forged documents, that my bridge was a hazard to public life. Flyers appeared on mailboxes claiming the HOA would restore safety and order. It was classic distraction, designed to sway public opinion. But I didn't play their game. Instead, I prepared. I gathered every bit of evidence I had: the trespassing footage, the fake notices, the gravel bam, the cement dumping. My lawyer organized it into a clean timeline supported by county records and inspection reports. Meanwhile, the county attorney had filed environmental charges against Karen's company, which only made things worse for their side. By the time the court date came, the entire town seemed to know. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even a few curious faces from neighboring counties. It wasn't every day that a small-town HOA ended up in front of a judge. Karen sat at the plaintiff's table, looking like she hadn't slept in days. The rest of the HOA board sat behind her, stiff and silent. Her attorney started strong, painting me as an unstable recluse who refused to cooperate with community standards. He claimed my bridge had been illegally modified and posed a risk to residents. But when it was our turn, my lawyer didn't waste time. He played the video of Karen trespassing with the cement buckets, then the footage of her hired workers dumping debris into the creek, then the photos of the fake county notices. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of the recordings. The judge leaned forward, arms crossed. When the final piece of evidence, a time-stamped video of Karen's SUV blocking my property gate, played, the room broke into quiet murmurs. Even the HOA board members looked uneasy. The judge turned to Karen's lawyer, asking whether they had any evidence supporting their claims of public ownership or safety violations. They didn't. Their so-called maps were printed screenshots from Google Earth with red marker lines drawn across them. It was a disaster for them. By the time my lawyer finished, the judge didn't even need to deliberate. He dismissed the HOA's case entirely. Then, in a tone that was calm but sharp, he called their actions malicious harassment. He fined the HOA for filing a frivolous lawsuit and ordered them to pay my legal fees. But it didn't end there. The county prosecutor, who had been watching the case closely, filed separate charges against Karen for environmental damage, trespassing, and impersonation of county officials. She didn't just lose her HOA position, she lost her company's local contracts, too. When the verdict was read, the courtroom erupted in whispers. I didn't smile or celebrate. I just exhaled, like a man who had been holding his breath for months. Outside the courthouse, a few neighbors came up to me. Some apologized for believing the HOA's stories. Others said they'd been too scared to speak up. Karen had ruled through fear, and for the first time, people saw what that looked like in the light. The county ordered the HOA to rebuild the damaged part of the creek and pay fines for illegal dumping. My bridge was officially declared private property, immune from any HOA authority. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe easy. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the water run beneath the bridge. The paint trap had long since washed away, replaced with stronger guardrails and a new camera system. My dogs lay quietly at my feet, the air heavy with the scent of wet cedar and freedom. But then, something unexpected happened. A car pulled up by the fence line, an older couple from 2 houses down. They'd been some of Karen's earliest supporters, always attending her meetings and enforcing her little rules. But this time, they weren't there to complain. They brought me a pie, still warm, and said it was an apology from the neighborhood. I realized then that the fight hadn't just been about a bridge. It was about standing up to control, fear, and manipulation, the kind that hides behind HOA bylaws and phony authority. And when one person pushes back, it gives others permission to do the same. Months passed. The HOA restructured. New leadership took over. People who wanted peace, not power. The construction project near the creek was scrapped entirely, replaced with a simple park bench overlooking the water. The bridge became a quiet symbol of what happens when you stand your ground. And as for Karen, she moved away, Rumor had it she had sold her house and left town before the county could seize her assets to cover fines. No one saw her after that. Sometimes I still drive across the bridge late at night and glance down at the creek, remembering how close it came to being destroyed. The reflection of my headlights dances across the water, and I can't help but smile. The bridge didn't just hold, it won. It stood against lies, intimidation, and corruption. And like any good bridge, it connected something, the line between fear and freedom. That's how one HOA Karen learned that sometimes, when you try to break a man's bridge, you end up burning your own.